Thanks very much, and hello everyone. I'd like to start with a question. What is it that connects Apple, Volvo, and Pokemon? It starts with Apple, who back in March launched a new version of their iPad Pro, which for the first time had a LIDAR scanner. Now, LIDAR is kind of like radar, but instead of using sound waves like radar does, it uses lasers. This technology previously was kind of quite big and quite cumbersome, so it was a very incredible technical effort by Apple to include it in a mobile or portable device. What it does in a nutshell is to scan your immediate environment. So it sends out these laser scanning all around the room and constructs a very rapid digital model of the place where you're standing. This is incredibly useful for augmented reality. Google actually has a similar very different approach to a similar problem using what's called the ARCORE depth API. Now, Google doesn't have access to dedicated hardware like Apple does because Android has to work across so many different phones and tablets. So instead, they've taken an approach of just using a single camera. As you move your camera around taking like a video, it creates a depth map of the environment you're in, so you can see where things are near to the camera and where things are far away. For example, here's my slightly messy living room, and if I wave my camera around, it builds up a depth map. So you can see the objects that are closer to me and the objects that are further away. And again, that's helpful for believably positioning augmented reality. These are Google's AR search results, one of the big hits of the lockdown, as people discovered that by searching for different animals on Google, it gave you the option to see 3D models of those animals and then to place those 3D models into your environment. One thing that's very important in augmented reality is occlusion, or sometimes called blending, where objects appear to be realistically in front of or behind objects. That's what a depth map or a LiDAR scanner is good for. If you take a look at the picture of the dog on the left, I've switched off blending, so it appears as if he's kind of half on the floor and half on my table, and it doesn't look very realistic. Whereas if I enable blending, the dog appears to be behind the table because of this depth map that my phone has created, and it adds a much greater sense of believability, or what's sometimes called placeness. This isn't just for fun, this can also be applied to commercial uses. Also earlier this year, Google announced a partnership with BURBERRY to start showing some of its products in augmented reality search results. So searching, for example, Burberry's Arthur Check sneakers would show you a high quality 3D model of that sneaker, which you could then place into your environment. So you could place it next to your outfits that you already have and see how they work, see how they combine, and it believably blends into the environment because of this depth map that's created. So it's super important in the inspiration phase of purchase. And Snapchat, who I think are probably the leaders in consumer augmented reality at the moment, also announced earlier this year what's called ground segmentation, which is again using just the phone camera, no dedicated hardware, to create a model of what's ground and what's not, so you can turn it into lava or you can make it appear as if it's flooded. And this is something that I expect we'll see a lot more in augmented reality through the rest of this year. And Niantic, the company which makes Pokemon Go, also announced their version of this just last week. It's called reality blending, and it allows your Pokemon to more believably interact with the world and the objects around them. In the first versions of Pokemon Go, people said it was augmented reality, but it didn't really feel like it. It just felt like you were seeing a digital sticker of a Pokemon because it didn't in any way interact with its environment. That's changed now thanks to reality blending. But there was a second part of the announcement of reality blending, which I think is an even bigger indicator of what's important in the future. Niantic's announcement was in two parts. The first was the reality blending, but the second was what's called POKÉSTOP scanning. Let me just read their description of what that means. Pokemon trainers will be able to contribute to building 3D maps of the locations of their favorite Pokéstops and gyms by walking around those locations and recording videos with their devices. These videos allow us to generate dynamic 3D maps, which gives devices such as current mobile phones and future headsets a better understanding of the depth and the complexities of the real world. Now, this idea of building this dynamic 3D map, a one-to-one scale map of the entire world, is not unique to Niantic or Pokemon. In fact, everybody's working on it. Apple, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft each have their versions. Niantic is one of the bigger independents, and a company called Ubiquity 6 who have their version called Displayland. Then there are many other independents, including 6D, Immersal, Scape, and Visualix, all working on tools which enable this one-to-one scale map of the world. In fact, there are fewer independents than there were because the market is beginning to consolidate. First, Facebook bought the London-based Scape Technologies, and just recently, NIANTIC bought 6D.ai, whose technology is what makes up the new versions of reality blending and POKÉSTOP scanning. So you can see the market beginning to consolidate and the bigger players starting to snap up the smaller ones, because this is a race for what's probably going to be the next big tech platform. It's got lots of names, but it's commonly referred to as the Mirrorworld. The Mirrorworld, if you haven't heard of it, was described fantastically in this article by Kevin Kelly in Wired at the beginning of last year. It's online. I suggest you try and track it down. It's really super interesting. I'm just going to quote this passage from it. Someday soon, every place and thing in the real world, every street, lamppost, building and room, will have its full-size digital twin. For now, only tiny patches of the mirror world are visible. Piece by piece, these virtual fragments are being stitched together to form a shared, persistent place that will parallel the real world. So the mirror world is a one-to-one scale digital map of the world, including everything. And the key word in here is persistent. When you place an experience into the mirror world using technology, it's there for everyone to see. When I use augmented reality now, only I see it, unless I record it and share it with somebody. But in the future, I'll be able to create an augmented reality experience and pin it to a place permanently or semi-permanently, so that anybody going to the same place will be able to see the same thing as I do in the same way. A beautiful example of this was this experience by Nexus Studios for the Dallas Cowboys. They built a one-to-one scale digital model of the Dallas Cowboys stadium and pinned these giant size digital experiences around the stadium. So if you have an enabled phone with the correct app, you could wander around the Dallas Cowboys stadium, point your app at these specific spots, and you would see these giant animations play out. Very impressive piece of work, and I think something we're going to see a lot more of in the future. And the same technology that Apple now have in their iPads, LIDAR, is also critical to self-driving cars, because the technology is exactly the same. You're sending out laser beams to scan your environment. These laser beams are then used for mapping and detecting objects in the environment around you. Volvo have announced that they'll be putting LIDAR in all of their cars from 2022 onwards. So everybody playing Pokemon and everybody driving a Volvo will be contributing to the same thing, building up a persistent shared map of the environment at one-to-one scale, which can be used for everything from entertainment to self-driving cars. So the question I asked at the beginning is, what connects Apple, Volvo and Pokemon? The answer is the next big tech platform. Whether that's called the Mirrorworld or something else, this is what everybody's working on, this is what everybody's working towards, and this is what you'll start to see manifesting itself in different ways in the next 6 months and the years to come. Thank you very much.